spend your lunchtime with us on the week of Halloween. Eat your Wheaties in addition to your Halloween candy this week. So welcome to Grove's Learning Organization. We're really thrilled to have you here today for, I think, the third or fourth installment of our GLOW education series. Before we get started, I'm going to introduce myself, let you know about a few opportunities that we have coming up for families to engage with Grove's and Grove's Academy. And then I'm going to introduce our presenters. So I am Nancy Segretti. I am our Director of Growth and Enrollment at GLOW, and I have the wonderful honor of working alongside our professionals in our Learning Center, as well as our admissions and enrollment departments. We have a really wonderful calendar of opportunities to engage with GLOW this year and to explore our academy as well as our Learning Center. I do want to note that we have quite a few upcoming Grove's Academy admissions events this fall, and we'd love to see you there. And I believe some of you are already planning to be at those. Those are really wonderful events to have an opportunity to see our school and our students and our faculty in action. And I think really the best way to understand the Grove's Academy experience is to be here and see it in action. Our open house, our first open house of the year, will be next Wednesday, November 6th in the morning. You'll get an opportunity to tour our newly renovated, beautiful learning spaces and building. You'll see students in action. You'll get to meet school leadership, faculty members, as well as talk to some current families. So that's just a really wonderful opportunity to get to see all of it together. You can register for that as well as all other upcoming events on our website. And for the open house, you can also just show up too. That's fine as well. You don't have to register. We'd love to welcome you. So a few housekeeping items to get us kicked off. I'll keep us on schedule. Your cameras and your microphone have been turned off. Our presenters will present, and then hopefully we'll have some time to take some questions at the end. The best way to submit questions is through the chat function. At the top of your screen, you should see a little chat or dialogue bubble. You can click that, put in your question, and then click it again to make it go away. So feel free to submit questions throughout or at the end, and hopefully we'll have some time at the end to have some questions, which I can moderate for our panel. We are recording today, so if you see anything that you try to jot down and you're not able to get it, you will get a recording of this presentation in your inbox after the event in the next day or so. And now, without further ado, I'm very pleased to introduce our esteemed panel today. We have with us Dr. Lori-Ann Brogdon, who is our Head of School and Director of Learning at Grove's Academy, Ellen Engstrom, our Director of Curriculum at Grove's Academy, and Andy Tolan, one of our upper school leaders and faculty members at Grove's Academy. We're also joined by Erica Sutton, who is our Director of Admissions, and will give us a very brief overview of our admissions process at the end. Dr. Brogdon, Ellen, and Andy, I will hand it over to you. Welcome.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much, Nancy, for the introduction. And for sharing a little bit about who we are. It is great to be here today, this afternoon, to share with you many of the wonderful ways Grove's Academy serves students who have both dyslexia as well as learning differences and ADHD. Today, we're going to take you through a little bit of information around both of those topics. But to start with, we wanted to really ground you in who we are as a school, our mission, and what our vision is as part of the GLOW organization. Here at Grove's Academy, our mission is that we build confidence, success, and purposeful experiences for transforming our students' lives. This is really important to us. We want to make sure that our students are coming in and they're building all of these three key pieces in order to really become the students that we know they can be, to give them every possible opportunity to grow and to learn, and to be in a space where they're getting the supports that are truly individualized. Our vision is to redefine the way our nation is taught, one student, one teacher, and one school at a time. As part of the organization, we are a small piece or part of the three-piece of GLOW that ensures that students who attend our school are meeting this mission, as well as we are achieving this vision of creating students and encouraging our students, one student at a time, to truly make a difference in this world through their learning and their growing in their capacities. So who we serve specifically, we specifically serve students who have dyslexia, ADHD, other executive functioning challenges, and other language-based disabilities. Typically, the profile of our students have average to above average intellectual functions, along with other learning differences and disabilities. So if you're considering applying here, we take in quite a bit of information about your children, and we look forward to making sure that we are a match and that we meet the needs that your student has to ensure that they're going to have that transformational experience with us and our faculty and staff. Today's topics are going to be really focused on dyslexia and ADHD and executive functioning. When we talk about dyslexia, we're really going to be defining what dyslexia is and how Groves Academy supports students specifically diagnosed with dyslexia, how we meet those needs, how we look at each student on a one-to-one basis to really think about what it is that serves them best in the classroom, and how we can ensure that we are helping to transform their lives through the concepts of reading and reading comprehension. With ADHD and executive functioning, we're looking at our students and we're going to help to define what ADHD is. We're going to tell you how important it is to have executive functioning skills and how we build upon those skills specifically here at Groves Academy for our students. And so without further ado, I'm going to pass this off to Ellen Engstrom, our Director of Curriculum, who's going to begin with a definition and an introduction to dyslexia.
Thank you, Dr. Brogdon, very much. Dyslexia is a brain-based disorder that results from the difficulty with processing sounds in language. So a person with dyslexia has a very hard time recognizing that words are made up of sounds. It affects the ability to learn to read, write, and spell. And dyslexia accounts for about 80% of all learning disabilities. However, it is a very specific weakness. Sally Shaywitz, who did some of the crucial studies on with the National Reading Panel back in the early 2000s, calls it an unexpected weakness in a sea of strength. And we do know that people with dyslexia can be very intelligent and very great problem solvers. So 52 years ago, when Groves was founded, it was founded because of a small group of parents who had children who couldn't learn to read, and they couldn't find anyone in the metro area at that time who could treat their children. And so they put together a very small version of Groves Academy. We take that very seriously, and we're very committed to remediating and accommodating dyslexia. So in our lower school, which has grades 1 through 6, is the division that focuses particularly on remediation and intervention. We use a Tier 3 reading curriculum that's based on the science of reading and has really proven efficacy. Tier 3 meaning the most intense intervention for reading and spelling that is designed specifically for people who are diagnosed with dyslexia. We teach this curriculum in small groups, and our instruction is very much differentiated according to student need. By that, I mean that we really study our students' learning profiles and know what to expect in terms of their ability to learn, their strengths and their weaknesses, so we can design and intervene as appropriate. In middle school, which has grades 6 through 8, we have differentiated small group remedial instruction, but they also use assistive technology accommodations that are very common and very helpful for students who struggle with reading but have the intellectual ability to do well in school. So assistive technology can lower the barrier that dyslexia provides. And it allows students to move along with their at grade level and at intellectual level as well, so that they can progress and grow along with their peers. So I can't really ever do a talk about dyslexia without talking about brains. And the reading brain is important to understand when we talk about reading and spelling instruction, as well as dyslexia. So science does tell us about how children learn to read and spell. And and here you see two brains. On the left is a non-dyslexic brain, and on the right is a dyslexic brain. You probably notice there's a little bit of difference. The neural networks that are responsible for our ability to read and to spell and to make a connection between sounds in language and symbols, it's located on the left side of the brain. And over time, in a typical development, these language centers develop connections between each other, and pretty soon they become very fast, and so reading becomes automatic. However, with people who are dyslexic, the left side of their brains look differently. There's much less neural activity. The language areas are not lighting up if you do an fMRI scan, because they're not activated. And so as a result, the connections that need to occur for reading to be possible, and spelling too, are simply not there. The good news is that with good remediation and some intensive remediation, we can actually change that brain to look more like the non-dyslexic brain. So when people say, wonder if reading is rocket science, yes. I mean, is rocket science? Yes, it really is. And it's a form of brain surgery too. So it's also important to remember that reading is not natural for humans, that human brains evolved to allow for communication through speech, but it happened fairly recently. People began to write, which meant they also began to read, only about 5,000 or 6,000 years ago. And, so that we started with Egyptian hieroglyphics and various symbols and so on, until we come to the Greek alphabet, which is the foundation for our own alphabet in English and other languages. So, because reading and writing are a late developing skill in human experience, we have to understand that the importance that oral language really forms the basis from which we can process some of the neural networks that are used for language, which did evolve, to be able to read and spell and so on. So when we teach students to read, and especially when we remediate them, it's very important to let them know, look, the oral language, the speech sounds that you create, is what makes up words. Letters are nothing more than symbols that stand in for speech sounds. Now, when students have challenges with speech and language, that can negatively affect their ability to read and spell, because they have to be able to hear the speech sounds clearly before they can connect them or transfer them to letters and make that really strong connection. So here at Groves, we have a very robust speech and language department in our learning center, and they work with many of our students who not only have dyslexia, but they also have some challenges with their speech and language, oral language. So here you see what's known as the reading rope. It's also called the simple view of reading, though if you look at it, you realize it's really not that simple. And in order to be a skilled reader, there's a whole lot of sub-skills that need to be developed. For people with dyslexia, the part that is lacking, or the part that is the struggle, is the word recognition part, which you see on the lower left there. And that includes what we call phonological awareness, which just means awareness of sounds in words, of syllables in words, so on. Also, we need to, that also then leads to the need to be able to decode or break the code of letters in words by associating those letters with the sounds and being able to blend those sounds. So we call it decoding because it is in fact breaking the code of language. And then we also need to develop sight recognition, so you understand that what goes into the word, you can decode it so easily that you can pretty much read at the speed of sight. So then that frees up your cognitive space to be able to focus on what the words mean, which is what we deal with here at the top of the reading rope. This is language comprehension, which is essential for developing reading skills beyond just being able to decode words. And that includes things like vocabulary, understanding language structures, being able to reason, knowing how how text works, and so on. In addition to all of this, a decent amount of executive function is important for for developing truly skilled reading. So when we talk about either reading instruction or reading remediation, we need to be thinking about the science of reading, which is a large body of scientific research about reading and writing, and it comes from many different fields that are related to the process of reading, including cognitive psychology and communication sciences, which would be like speech and language work, developmental psychology, education, linguistics plays a large part, neuroscience, school psychology, and then implementation science, which sounds a little weird, but we also have to be able to implement these programs so that they're taught with fidelity. Just because a program follows the science of reading does not necessarily mean that the teacher is trained to actually implement it. So all of these things are really important. So reading instruction is one thing. Reading instruction is what we want to provide all of our students in the early grades in school. And intervention really refers more to working with students who are struggling, learning to read and learning to spell. Both of them are going to cover major areas of language that we know that research has told us are extremely important for reading and spelling, particularly phonemic awareness, and that's awareness of sounds and syllables, letter sound connections, associating letters with sounds, that's phonics, morphology, which is all the prefixes and suffixes and so on that in English particularly we add to words, to base words, to change the meaning of the words. Reading fluency, which refers to the speed and the accuracy of reading, which allows you to reading fluency gives you time to think about the meaning rather than just focusing on the decoding. Vocabulary, of course, and then comprehension, which involves a number of areas in cognition and language. So moving on, to follow up with that topic, what's the difference between reading instruction and reading intervention? Intervention is going to proceed at a pace that's specific to a student to learn to read and spell with automaticity, because whereas reading instruction in a first, second, third grade classroom, for example, that's going to go at a certain pace. And students who can't keep up with that pace are going to need probably more time and more individual attention and practice. So there are a lot of aspects of reading and spelling that will require more time for a student with dyslexia to learn. So it's important then that we spend the time and have the patience to work with the student to basically be able to learn how to decode and also how to do it automatically. So one kind of chilling fact is that students without dyslexia can learn a word with only 6 exposures to it, but a dyslexic student may require 40 exposures. So practice alone is a very important part and of intervention and also just to be able to develop, to provide the student with the kind of success they deserve. So intervention has 5 variables. First of all, the intervention itself, like the reading program, has to be based on the science of reading, which means it includes all of those things that I listed before: phonemic awareness, phonics, reading fluency, morphology, vocabulary, comprehension, and so on. Then it's also it depends on the intensity of the intervention. A tier 3 intervention, which is what we use here at Groves, is designed specifically for students with dyslexia, providing time and practice and also metacognition about what they're learning. Whereas tier 1 is going to be for a more general classroom and will progress at a faster pace because the children are able to be able to master the concepts in that amount, through that intervention. The other variable is frequency. How often does the student meet with their teacher? At Groves, our students have reading all 5 days a week for a decent length of time in small groups, so that they are continually exposed to reading and its application throughout the day. Another factor is the duration. How long does each intervention last? Because length of intervention is important, because then you can deal with more aspects of dyslexia and of the the gaps and so on that the student has in knowledge. And of course, the other part is the knowledge and expertise of the teacher. It really takes a lot of training to be a good intervention teacher. And at Groves, we provide a great deal of professional development to our teachers so they have the knowledge and the confidence to be able to diagnose and teach diagnostically the students that they see here. So at Groves, as I said, we have 5 days a week in our lower school, 45 minutes a day for Monday through Thursday, and 30 minutes on Fridays. And the instruction is taught with fidelity. We have a trainer on site who observes teachers and helps them to teach the programs they teach with fidelity, which is crucial. And we have curriculum-based assessments to ensure student mastery so that we can tell if students have missed certain crucial parts. We can go back to the teacher and to the students and make sure that those concepts are taught. So we have a kind of a check on fidelity. Then we have intervention specialists who can provide support to struggling students and may see them in addition to the time they spend in their small group with their teacher. So we are able to even further individualize through that exposure. So people wonder, will I ever get over it? Will it go away? And the answer is no, but it also can be really well managed. It's a brain-based disorder. So even with good remediation, there will be pieces that remain. Students with dyslexia benefit greatly from remediation. They still may need some support to achieve their academic goals or their employment potential. And even though they can read and write well, those may be very effortful for students and it may make them very tired. So support from assistive technology can be life-changing. I've worked with many students who learned to read quite well, but still at times needed, just because of the tiring effect of reading independently, assistive technology through a text reader can be extremely helpful. And then basically, remediation is really important, and we really want to get students as young as possible. However, we can continue to work on remediating reading disabilities or reading difficulties well into adulthood, but it takes more time. Accommodations, we definitely want to start students with remediation. So as you see in this graphic, there will be a much higher proportion of remediation to accommodation early in their school experience. But as time goes on, the need for accommodations grows because text becomes more complicated, more difficult. And the amounts of reading are greater. So all of these things factor into deciding on what accommodations are appropriate. And with that, I am going to hand this over to my colleague, Andy Tolan, who will tell you about ADHD and executive function here at Groves.
Thank you, Ellen. I really appreciate ending on that note, talking about shifting the focus between remediation to accommodation, because one of the things that my high school students work hard in my executive functioning class is understanding what accommodations they benefit from and understanding how to communicate that to others and advocate for that at a workplace or if they go on to pursue other education. But a lot of our students in the lower school, the main thing they're focusing on maybe literacy or another language-based learning disability. And then by the time our students are in high school, some of those executive function challenges that Ellen mentioned can kind of go along with dyslexia, start to be more prominent as like they've responded to other reading interventions. And we get a lot of students who have ADHD that as the demands of school change, they're not able to mask as easily as the demands of projects and group work, and keeping on top of multiple classes makes it harder. So our demographic shifts a little bit too. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what ADHD is and what it isn't. So something I like to say is that ADHD isn't exactly a deficit in attention, because attention is just where your mind is at any given moment, right? So you're always thinking about something, you're always noticing something, maybe external to you, maybe internal to you. Even when you're daydreaming, you're paying attention to something. It's more of a deficit in being able to use the executive functioning skills of sustaining that attention and directing that attention to things that may be not as motivating for you to direct them toward. ADHD is associated with weaker executive functioning skills more or less across the board, which I'll explain a little bit more about in a second. And even though it really affects learning, especially the way students are taught in a traditional school, it's not a learning disability because it doesn't directly affect the information processing side of learning those academic skills. It's more of a kind of across the board barrier. So one of the concepts I really like to explain to students is that ADHD, folks with ADHD often have a harder time being motivated by knowing that something is important or necessary. And that can come with a lot of shame and guilt about not being able to start the thing that they know they should be doing. So they often will postpone the important thing until the important thing is also an urgent thing, because urgency is different than importance, and it's something that's much more motivating for folks with ADHD. And that's part of the concept called the interest-based nervous system, which is this idea that rather than importance or having set a planned priority, that you're motivated by the things you inherently enjoy, things that make you curious, things that are new to you, and things that are challenging. So schools in general tend to put high demands on attention specifically, and EF skills in general. And for folks with ADHD, if the incentives are abstract or longer term, like the grade you're going to get at the end of the semester, or if they're imposed by others and there's not a lot of opportunities for choice, it's really not surprising that students with ADHD can struggle at school. So this is one my students told me to put in. So what is executive functioning? It's something they have simplified to frontal lobe stuff, which, it isn't, it's more complex than that, but they're not wrong. It's stuff that happens in the frontal lobe that has to do with goals. And in particular, it's the brain's ability to coordinate thinking and behavior needed to start, sustain, monitor, and adjust one's attitudes. So your inner state and behaviors are what you're doing in order to achieve a goal. And sometimes just starting the darn thing is the hardest part of that for me in particular. All right, so I'm just going to give you a whirlwind tour of the executive functioning skill vocabulary we use in the Groves Upper School, because it might help you get a sense of the types of skills we're talking about and give you a taste of our executive functioning class. So metacognition, I put first for some reason. It's actually developmentally the last executive functioning skill to pop online for most people. But this is your ability to think about your own thinking, reflect, self-monitor, and realize, oh, this isn't really working for me, and going back to the drawing board and coming up with a different strategy. Organization is having a system for keeping track of things. And the part that almost always gets left out is maintaining and using the system for keeping track of things. Planning and prioritization we put together because they're so interconnected, but that's just knowing the 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 of reaching your goal and being able to look ahead down the road and see what possible challenges or obstacles might be in the way. Sustained attention is the one. Sustained attention is the one that is most classically associated with ADHD. That's being able to pay attention for extended periods of time, maybe on things that you're not that interested in, and to do so until your task is done and not being distracted. Time management is another really big one that we focus on, which is using your time effectively to accomplish your goal, and even developing that understanding of time, something that I, as an adult with ADHD, continue to experience from time to time, is the feeling that, like, well, if a task takes 1 or 2 steps, it must take much less time than a task with 5 or 6 steps. And like, even if the step is something like clean the garage, I'll be like, that'll be quick because I can imagine everything. Yeah. Time management is a big one, and understanding and being able to visualize time is a big part of that too. Emotional control is not letting your feelings get in the way of reaching your goal, which is different than a lot of our students think coming in, which is kind of ignoring your feelings. It's actually the opposite. It's understanding and naming your feelings and letting your feelings guide you toward what you value, what's important to you, as a message from, yourself of like, this matters to me because I'm feeling something, but not letting your emotions be the driver. Response inhibition is part of that, not letting the emotions be the driver. That is being able to control your impulses. Sometimes for our students, it's, realizing you got something really funny to say about your friend, and then like, oh, well, that actually isn't nice. I think I won't say it. It can be like, ooh, call on me, or anything like that. Working memory, I think it can be well explained as like how much desk space you have in your brain to keep track of various things you have going at once. It can also be compared to like the RAM, or random access memory, in a computer, but it's how much stuff you can keep kind of directly in your awareness at a given time. And for typical folks, it's like 7 plus or minus 2 things, and you can get the most of it, by learning how to chunk things and learning how to kind of group things together. But people with ADHD and people with executive dysfunction may have working memory deficits. Working memory is one of the harder things to improve over time. So a lot of our strategies around working memory are more focused on kind of getting it outside the brain, getting it on paper, getting it into a digital planner or calendar so that you're not the one who's keeping track of it. Your Post-it note is keeping track of it. Cognitive flexibility is a very important one, which is being able to change tactics if things aren't working out. And it can seem like it's at odds with, I guess it's lunchtime here in the upper school. Cognitive flexibility can seem like it's at odds with goal-directed persistence, which is this, not giving up in the face of setbacks and being determined to succeed and, psyching yourself up to reach your goal. So that's where metacognition comes in, making the decision of like, am I going to, be tenacious and cling on to this goal if it's the last thing I do, or am I going to change tactics or decide on another goal that's maybe meets my same needs, that goes a different route. And lastly, task initiation, which I like to shorten to just starting the damn thing, which can be the hardest thing for a lot of our students, especially students with ADHD. So why does Groves teach executive functioning skills across grade level? It's because we recognize that there's a real need for it in Minnesota and in the world. Without understanding their own executive functioning, students and families, future teachers, and even future employers can default to other explanations of why things are not happening. Maybe that the child or student lacks motivation, or maybe that they are lazy, or it could even be like a moral or character judgment of them. And as those pile up over time, they can be really harmful for kids to develop that self-image. So that's one of the things we try to work through kind of right away. We realize that traditional school maybe expects a lot of these executive functioning skills to happen developmentally or grow out of the instructional activities that they're providing. But just like with reading or math or writing, many of our students benefit most from explicit instruction in these tools and strategies, rather than just hoping to pick it up through experience and osmosis. Finally, having a class and a common language about executive dysfunction can reduce students' stress and help them connect what's happening to them here and now in school with a broader future and all of the possibilities that lie before them. So all education relies on executive function and expects it to develop and improve, but all the stakeholders involved, from child to parent to teacher to administrator to future employer, should understand that this is happening and how it's happening. So our particular goals regarding EF at GLOW are that students, number one, will understand their own executive functioning in a way that's developmentally appropriate for them. It can be different in first grade versus 11th grade. That they will have a little toolbox, or big toolbox sometimes, of strategies that they can pick and choose from, and they know what will work for them, and they can choose the right tool for the right job. Engaging in discussions that focus on how their brain works, developing a brain-based explanation for why some things are hard, so that they're abandoning those explanations of I'm dumb or I'm bad. And expanding the purpose of school and how they approach learning, which to me means helping them connect what's happening in school now and see the benefit of some of the things that their interest-based nervous system, if you will, doesn't find immediately motivating, how those things connect to things in their future, expand their possibilities, and open doors. And lastly, that the strategies that we're teaching, they're able to not just apply to academic situations, but that they are generalized enough that they can take them in a new situation and reach for them or even modify them. And when it comes to understanding their learning profile and assistive technology and tools like that, being able to evaluate future assistive technology that hasn't even come out yet to see if it would work for them or not. So how do we address executive functioning in particular? One of the things that all three of our division levels, lower school, middle school, and upper school, share is the importance of developing an age-appropriate vocabulary or terminology for EF skills that's used in a dedicated EF class, but also throughout the curriculum. There's a really strong emphasis on process of learning versus product of learning. So even though we still have grades, we still have homework, we still have tests and projects, a lot of how students are given feedback and assessed, and the interactions they have with their teachers are more about how they're doing and helping them recognize themselves what's working and what's not. And all teachers will model their own metacognition and explain their decision-making processes and the why behind lesson objectives and classroom procedures, which can be really satisfying or even necessary for kids with ADHD in order to be invested. Why do I have a bike in the background here? One of the things that we talked about when we were designing our EF curriculum is how it was really important to not have it be a curriculum kind of about the science and history of bike riding, but we needed to be teaching kids how to ride the bike. In other words, we can't just teach about executive functioning, we need to teach executive functioning strategies. So we do. One of the strategies that we use, I think, in all three divisions is Get Ready, Do Done, which is a form of backward planning or backward design, where they start with kind of a sense of what done looks like, work back to what would the steps we would need to get there, then what tools and resources would we need to do those steps, and then gather those, and then do the thing, and then it's done. And that can be done independently by the time you're in 12th grade, with more and more scaffolding the younger and younger you get, to the point where it's an entirely teacher-led activity when they're really young. We also embed those teachable moments and specific lessons or in our curricula to teach both the what of EF, so the concepts and vocab that I already mentioned, and also the how, the strategies and the skill building and the application. So this is a visual of the get ready, do done. So you would start off, drawing of like, okay, we need to make flashcards. What does done look like? And kind of draw out what an ideal flashcard would look like. And then, okay, what do we need to do in order to make that flashcard? Here's our list of things. Okay, what do we need to do those things? Kind of get your ingredients in your recipe, and then follow it left to right when your planning's done and you're ready to actually execute. So in lower school, the biggest emphasis on EF, I'd say, is just on kind of attitude towards self and school. And this idea that the brain, although it's not a muscle, is like a muscle in the sense that it grows and improves in response to what you do with it. And it does the most growing in response to appropriate challenges and doing things that are hard. And that students, all learners, can do things that are hard. They also have an EF topic of the month every month, starting with metacognition and ending with goal-directed persistence in May. And they have a dedicated EF lesson to go over that topic each Friday. In middle school, it's a time of change. Students are asked to move classes more, to manage their own materials more, and to get to understand different teachers' approaches and styles and attitudes about grading and homework and late work and all that stuff. And they'll be expected to do more homework from multiple classes. They start to be involved more with extracurricular activities. And it's a big change from elementary, and they need more independence, which means they need more executive function skills of their own. So common challenges for kids in middle school who have EF difficulties would be forgetting the things they need or showing up not ready to learn, procrastinating, putting it off, which can be, I just don't feel like it because it's not fun. But a lot of the times too, it's that I don't really understand what the finished product looks like. Starting it sounds really hard. Having poor time estimation, sort of like I described before with myself, feeling like if it's just 1 or 2 steps, it'll take 10 minutes when it may take 30 or 40 or 50 minutes. Not being able to read social cues as well or intuit adult expectations, and difficulty starting on non-preferred tasks. In other words, video games are more fun, so I'll do them before I'll do my homework. And I could do a whole other talk about how phones and video games and technology are just designed to kind of dominate and monetize that really scarce resource, which is our attention. And it's not just our kids, it's us adults too. Another thing they focus a lot on is time management. So they'll draw out sort of pie slices on the clock to show how long they're going to do things and how long they're expected to take to transition or to share out at the end. And they have a lot of sort of teacher confirmed planning out their week's assignments and longer term assignments using a planner, getting binder checks here at school, and talking about and managing time robbers, which, our phones are one of many. And that skill, that all encompassing EF skill that really does rely on all the other EF skills we teach, metacognition, being coaches for our kids, facilitating reflection on the quality of work, the importance, again, of growth mindset, or the idea that through effort you can develop, giving multiple opportunities in multiple ways to master skills, and learning for mastery, learning for confident, independent application of the learning. And students will learn to seek out strategies that play to their strengths. So how do we do that? We rely on the importance of routines, which benefit, I was going to say, all children, but really, if you look at a typical week for a typical adult, we rely on routines a lot ourselves. Visual and verbal directions, and examples of completed work, which I think is the most critical of those three, although they're all very important. schedules and resources, which means what you're going to need to do the thing. Again, reminiscent of the get ready, do done. Taking regular brain breaks and recognizing that, rest is not something that needs to be earned through, achievement, but it's something that, brains need, and that you will do better work if you make hay while the sun shines and take a break when it isn't. And again, managing those pesky time robbers. So in middle school, EF, similar to lower school, is taught in a specific class period, but the content area classes take turns teaching the topic throughout the school year. A lot of the topics are front loaded at the beginning of the year so that new students coming into growth and kind of all the students who've had some EF in lower school are getting the same terminology and learning the same skills. And the middle school faculty does an amazing job of planning together and working together how to embed a lot of these skills and strategies into their content area lessons. All right, this is my territory now. EF in the upper school is a little different, and we have some common threads that go throughout everything we do in our dedicated EF curriculum. Mindfulness practice, developing a shared executive functioning vocabulary that we use in our EF classes, but also that your physics teacher or your English teacher or your government teacher will also be using and using appropriately. Connection, again, to growth versus fixed mindset. And kind of expanding that to not just be about kind of your self-theory of intelligence or your self-theory of achievement, but also to have a growth mindset about things like relationships with peers or relationships with teachers or relationships with parents. The idea that just because things are a way that they are now doesn't mean they need to stay that way. And in a time of change that is high school, that can be really important. Applying whatever we're teaching in a group and independent environment. Kind of recognizing the importance of being affiliative or peer relationships at that age and leveraging it into an asset rather than a liability in the classroom. Understanding again how all of these skills and challenges to learning are underpinned by what's happening in the brain. And then being able to apply a lot of these skills and strategies and concepts in the wild through service learning by giving back to sometimes the families, sometimes the neighborhood, sometimes a variety of really great nonprofits in the Twin Cities on the students' own time in order to do good and to also hone those executive functioning skills. We also ask a lot of self-reflection, which can mean writing or conferencing with teachers and peers. And in order to self-reflect, you need to use that kind of capstone executive functioning skill, metacognition. So here is our 4-year game plan. In 9th grade, students are just figuring out how to do school, and they're getting the crash course in EF and learning how that EF vocabulary and some of those critical EF strategies can help them think like a student. The theme in 10th grade is self-discovery, or who am I as a learner, where they learn more about what it means to have a learning profile in general, a little bit more about themselves as a learner, a lot about the brain and the neuroscience of learning and of sleep, which is super important for teenagers, and why the teenage brain is different than a child's brain and different than an adult's brain. 11th graders are setting the course and leading the way. This is the year I would say that focuses the most on service and service as a workshop for practicing ADHD or executive functioning skills. And they have what's called a research and advocacy project, where they spend a lot of time and energy researching a cause that matters to them and finding a format, often a talk, to educate their peers about it. In addition to our 4-year, and in 12th grade, we focus a lot on legacy. So you're about to leave this safe port, this harbor. What are you going to leave behind when you go? How do you want to be remembered? And where are you going? And that's what we're doing right now in our classroom is where are you going? Students are interviewing adults who either have skills that they want to use in their jobs someday or have jobs that they want to have someday. And they're learning how to, reach out into the not just their parents, but their parents' friends and the friends of their parents' friends to ask those favors and have those meetings on the phone or over coffee. So it's a really exciting year, and it culminates in a senior speech that each senior does at the end of the year to kind of reflect on their time here. And often they're often really personal. They're always really good. So every student in upper school has an advisor who functions as an executive functioning coach. In particular, they are the cheerleader for the planning and prioritization that we expect our high schoolers to do relatively independently. So that would be looking at the planner, looking at the online classroom and gradebook to help them plan out their week ahead and set some of those long-term goals that, if you're a teenager and you're kind of living hand to mouth, academically speaking, you may not have on your own. So our EF supports are built into our classroom routines, similar to middle school. And again, that shared vocabulary follows students out of the EF classroom and into all their classes. Like all classes at Groves, our upper school has small class size. I think the biggest class I've ever taught is 13, and most of them are more around 8, which I feel really grateful for every day. And they're growth oriented, and the teacher-student relationship, although it's important everywhere, is really given space to grow and thrive into a real partnership here. I want to end with some student work. This was, I guess, like an art reflection about mindfulness. And it comes from a student whose name was Quinn, and it says, mindfulness lets me learn from my feelings without being overwhelmed by them. And that, I think, is just a really beautiful connection between the mindfulness activities we do in the classroom and that important executive functioning skill of emotional control, kind of knowing and recognizing your emotions, but not letting them be the driver in the driver's seat. So that is the crash course in executive functioning at Groves and kind of how we do it differently here. And now I'm going to hand it over to Nancy Segretti again.
Thank you so much. That was so informative. And now I'll be sharing out a quiz for everybody. No, I'm just kidding. Erica, I'd love to hand it over to you. I mean, our presenters have talked so much today about here's why it's different at Groves. Here's specifically what we do. And so I'd love to just give you a moment to talk a little bit about, okay, if a family is interested in getting in the admissions process, like how do we do that? And what does our admissions process look like?
Yeah, certainly. So I know we have a mix of people on the call today. Some of you are current Groves Academy families who have already gone through an admissions process with me, but maybe are making some decisions right now about do we move on to the next division, or what does the future look like? I would encourage you to engage with either admissions or anyone at Groves Academy to have those conversations. Also, I know there are some people on the call today that are maybe new to Groves, that are thinking, a lot of what was said today maybe resonates and maybe explains what I'm going through with my child or what I see that my child needs. So I'm here today to say I'm Erica. I'm the director of admissions, and I am someone that can start you along the journey of figuring out, would Groves Academy be right for my child? So we always say the first step to that is starting a conversation. So that's reaching out to Groves. There's a form right on our website that you can do contact us to get in touch with one of our family navigators, and then eventually they'll get you on to me as well to start that conversation of what is happening with your child and how can Groves Academy and or all of the resources we have within our GLOW ecosystem support your child. We also, if we deem that yes, let's continue this conversation about Groves Academy, we will invite you to apply. And when we apply, part of our application process is collecting a lot of data, information, psychoeducational testing or neuropsychological testing, IP evaluation if that's been done, learning plans that might be in place at school, feedback from teachers and tutors and whoever is touching your child on a daily or semi-daily basis to really understand what's happening. And that allows us to kind of dig deep to say, okay, do we have the resources and the curricular experience that aligns with your child's needs? And if so, we then invite you to visit. And that includes having a child do a full day visit day at Groves Academy so that we can observe them in our own environment to understand if we have what your child needs to thrive and be successful. And also for your student to understand, what would it be like to be a learner at Groves? Is it a place that I will feel successful? Along with visiting, we also invite all of our families to visit Groves as well, either through one of our upcoming open houses, as Nancy talked about, or setting up a private tour with the admissions team so that you can walk the halls, step into classrooms, and experience what Groves would look like for your child. Finally, as we're making enrollment decisions, we also will help you through the financial aid, financial assistance program at Groves if needed. About 30%, usually between 30 and 35% of our students receive some sort of tuition assistance. And we have a dedicated team member on our admissions team that will help families through that process and talk about the different financial pathways to Groves. Actually, if anybody here is interested in learning more, we have an Affording Groves event tomorrow night here in person at Groves Academy that you are all certainly welcome to attend, whether you're a current Groves Academy family or a potential Groves Academy family, to learn more about the financial pathways to Groves. So this is just to say, if you're out there listening today and you're making decisions about your child's future at Groves, and or if you're like, maybe we need to explore Groves as an option for my child, the admission staff is here to help guide you and figure out the journey and what's best for your child going forward. I'm going to throw it back to Nancy, as I see there's some great questions coming in the chat, and I think Nancy's going to facilitate some Q&A now with our team to get you answers. Nancy?
Thanks so much, Erica. There are so many good questions, and Andy, you're in there answering some, which we so appreciate. And I can help guide some of that. So I'm going to leave a little bit of time for questions here. I know there's been a few questions about, okay, how do I get my child executive functioning coaching sessions? How do I get into tutoring? Our Learning Center, which is a part of the GLOW organization that supports families in Groves Academy, as well as families in the community who do not attend Groves Academy, we have a suite of services there of individualized support. So the Learning Center is where we have comprehensive diagnostic evaluation, individualized tutoring in reading, writing, and study skills, individualized ADHD and executive functioning coaching with a certified executive function coach, individualized speech and language evaluation and sessions, as well as summer programming. If you're interested in getting in touch with our Learning Center team to explore any of those, specifically maybe including either the tutoring or the executive functioning coaching, you can call the main number on the website and get linked to a family navigator who will help you navigate and explore those options and help you get signed up. Or you can submit a contact us form on the website and someone will get in touch with you within 24 hours. Or you can simply respond to the email that you're going to get with this recording, and you're always going to get one of our team members responding back to you. There's a couple of really good questions in here that are around the topic today, and then I'll answer some of the individual ones around scheduling. I see those in there. But Ellen, I'm going to send a question over to you. When we talk about dyslexia and all of those skills that are associated with dyslexia, does that also apply to dysgraphia as far as the skills that we need as well as the remediation and that is needed? Can you speak a little bit to that?
Sure. Yeah, dysgraphia is related to dyslexia, definitely. So what differs it, and dysgraphia is interesting because a lot of people think of it as, handwriting, and it is so much more than that. Dysgraphia really speaks to written language and the ability to form sentences, spelling, written, so particularly how to transfer your oral language into written language in particular. So it has aspects of, of speech and language issues. It also has aspects of it often accompanies dyslexia because of the sound symbol issues that can interfere with spelling. And it also has impact on how well you can express your thoughts in writing, really. So it's not exactly like dyslexia, but I would say it's parked right next door to it.
Great. It's parked right next door. I love that. I love that visual for us that and so they often come hand in hand, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Here's another question from a parent or one of our attendees. They have a son who is 9, not diagnosed with dyslexia, but there's other language challenges.
Yes.
It is getting some after school support at Groves, reading aloud. And I think this is probably a common experience for many families who have a dyslexic child or a child who's having reading challenges. Like, at what point can we assume, okay, we're reading aloud and now we're going to read in our head? What is that transition point for a child who's struggling with reading?
That's a great question. Oral reading is, I think of it as sort of the golden door to reading fluency. And I advocate strongly that children read aloud with support every day for at least 15 minutes or so. And it's okay to read material that is maybe a little challenging, as long as there's somebody there to feed the child the words or answer a question about what a word means. But we want to sort of recreate or want to create a very fluid reading experience. Once children can read orally well, and oral reading develops oral reading fluency, and that affects comprehension as well. At some point, then we want to encourage them to read short passages longer. And actually, what we do at Groves, we work on that specifically with students, helping them to visualize as they read silently and retell what they've in their own words, what they've read. But it takes a while. You really have to be patient for that, because you want to be sure that students can read most of the words, at least 95% of them, that they can decode them in order to be a successful silent reader.
That's great. Thank you so much. I'm going to ask a question to Erica, and maybe Andy and Ellen, you might want to add some of this as well. Mm-hmm. This is a big question. When does our middle school start at Groves Academy? You want to talk a little bit about how we individualize that decision and that transition from lower school to middle school?
Yeah, I can start with that. So when you go onto our website and when I'm doing tours, it can be a little confusing because we have 6th grade kind of listed in both our lower school and our middle school. And that's with great reason. What I always explain to families is we're going to look at the child individually to make a recommendation for placement of 6th grade. Sometimes we're going to look at a student, especially if they're new to Groves, and or even if they're not new to Groves, but they could benefit from some deeper reading remediation. The level and time we spend on remediation in our lower school model is greater than our middle school. So oftentimes we'll recommend one more year of that lower school model to get some deeper reading and writing remediation before they launch to that middle school model. We're also looking at where the child is social emotionally and how developed their executive functioning skills are. That switch to middle school comes from a whole host of challenges that Andy talked about. When that middle school model kicks in, where you're changing classrooms every period, needing to work with different teachers, manage a lot more on your own. Some students are just not quite ready for 6th grade middle school model, or could just highly benefit from one more year in a more self-contained classroom to kind of build and hone some of those executive functioning skills and social emotional skills that are so important for middle school success. So honestly, most of our 6th graders at Groves are in our lower school. That's where most of them fall. However, we do have some students that have had some deep remediation and and are ready for middle school model in 6th grade so they can be in middle school in 6th grade. What I always like to point out is regardless of whether you participate in lower school 6th grade or middle school 6th grade, when you move to 7th grade, you are going to 7th grade in the middle school. You're not repeating any grades. So again, it's a case-by-case individual decision we make, looking deeply at our students' profile and where they're at. Again, it's just another way Groves can differentiate and meet students where they're at in a really phenomenal way during that middle school transition period.
I would just add too that it's not as if students in lower school are sitting in one classroom all day. They actually change teachers for so that they have a small group that meets at their own level, which might mean going to a different teacher. Same thing with math. So there's some transition that happens within the middle school that is within the lower school, that prepares students for greater transition, either in our middle school or somewhere else.
Great. Thanks so much. Any advice for where are the resources on executive functioning for adults? Help us, right? Andy, do you have any, or Ellen, do you have any recommendations for parents or adults that might say, I'd like to do a little learning on my own?
There's stats. I mean, there's a lot of work on that. And I mean, you could go to the website of CHADD, Children and Adults with ADD, I think, CHADD, is one place, which is an advocacy organization specifically for people with ADHD. And I think, and lots of books on executive function too. I don't have them at the tip of my fingertips, but I could easily, and so could Andy, produce that.
Oh, I unmuted just in time to hear the bell.
The bell.
I would say if you're looking for a book about how to ride the bike rather than about the history and maintenance of bikes, Atomic Habits is a good place to start. If you just want kind of a layperson's sort of set of tips and tricks for adults to put into practice right away to get better at kind of organization and time management and developing better habits and routines. I really recommend the book Mindset by Carol Dweck. It has great chapters about coaching and great chapters about teaching at a school setting, but also chapters about the parent-child relationship and chapters about romantic relationships and how having a growth mindset in those domains can be beneficial. And it's written by one of the best social psychologists who studies sort of theories of achievement in the country. But it's very readable and there's lots of stories and it's pretty fun. And once you read the first chapter or two, you can really jump around and just read the parts you want to read.
That's some great recommendations. Thank you. And of course, anytime that you need recommendations for something, just reach out to our team at Glow and we're happy to help you. I'm going to wrap us up here. There were a couple of questions about tutoring services versus executive function services and wait lists. And I can speak to that real briefly here at the end. If you are currently sitting on a wait list for tutoring services or executive functioning coaching, I encourage you always to reach out to the team, to the family navigator that you spoke with to get an update. One of the challenges that we know exists in this work in the community in general, not just at Groves, is that there's so much need for individualized support for your learner, and there's just not enough providers. So one of the things that we are really committed to is ensuring that we are building and growing our team as fast as possible to be able to support all of that demand. I will say that the more flexible you are in your schedule, if you're able to have a service done during the school day, and we have worked with some schools where the student can log on to a virtual session in their school during the school day with one of our Glow providers. If that's something you're open to, that can really change the length of time that you're sitting on a wait list. So if it's something that you'd like to explore, please reach out to our team. Our team will also help you to navigate the right service for your child, whether that's an ADHD or an executive function coach, or it's an individualized tutor. And sometimes students may need a journey of services. We have many students that might start with tutoring and then move into the summer program, or start with speech and language therapy and then move into tutoring and then move into executive functioning coaching. So it's not once you land in a place, there you are. We're always going to be responding to the student's progress and what skills they need to work on. And we can help guide you on where to start and then where to go next. Thank you all for joining us today. Thank you, Dr. Brogdon, Ellen, and Andy, and Erica for sharing such valuable information. As a reminder, you will all get this recording in your email, so please know that you'll have all the information at your fingertips. We hope to see many of you at our upcoming admissions events. We'd love to show you around our special place. And have a wonderful and safe Monday and safe Halloween week. Have a great day. Thanks so much.